My husband knew I was adopted. My dad told him before we were married. My husband was wanting to tell me, but they're from the old school and they did not want me to know. I went downtown, went to the health department, said I wanted my birth certificate. They looked and they came back and they said, we don't have a birth certificate. I was 42 years old. I got more and more suspicious. Finally, I said right out to him, am I adopted? Then he would not lie to me. He said, you were adopted. I called my mother and I told her I was going to come over and talk to them. So I said right out to him, you know, Dad, I know I'm adopted. And he turned just white. And he said, and the first thing he said to me was, and you still love us? I said, of course I love you. I love you more than ever. I said, you chose me. And he broke into tears, and I did too, of course. I thought, oh my word, all these years, 42 years before I found out, and they've had to live with that in fear. To find out all of a sudden that these aren't your biological parents, at that point I wanted honesty. Immediately things started going through my mind. Well, do I have brothers and sisters? That's the first thing I thought of. Then also medical things. Every time I went to a doctor, he'd say, well, do you have diabetes in your family? Do you have this in your family? Her name was Nina Falk. I called her on the phone and I said to her, does January 10th, 1922 ring a bell? That was when I was born. And there was dead silence. And then she said, yes, it does. I said, do I have brothers and sisters? She said, unfortunately not. You were the only one I ever had. She was crying and thanked me, and I could tell she just was very, very, very happy that she at least had talked to me. I said, you know, I'd like to meet you. And she said, I would like to meet you too. We had a date set up. The day before I was going to go, she called me. And she said, you know, I've been thinking it over, and I think would be better if you didn't come. She didn't want to see me because it would be too hard. And she cried on the phone. I really felt bad. Naturally, I was curious to see her and know her, but it just didn't work out that way. So when did I finally see my birth mother? I always watched the obituaries. And one night or one day in the paper, I saw a Nina Falk. So we went to the mortuary and we went in and signed in, and the two of us went up to the casket and took a look at her. And I remember my husband said, she's a nice looking lady, isn't she? And I said, yes, she is. I felt a little deprived, I guess, in a way that I never knew any or wasn't told any of my background, but yet I never held it against my mother and dad. I understood in that day and age, that's the way it was. I don't regret it one bit, because if I couldn't have known her or taught and seen her, and she chose not to have me come over, that was fine. I respected that. But that was my chance to get one look at her before she's buried. But we didn't stay around. We just went up and looked at her and left. That was the one and only time that I saw her. And of course, then she was in a casket.